Rain poured over the city as a billionaire slammed his brakes, because under a flickering streetlight, he saw a barefoot boy dancing in the storm, and beside him, his paralyzed daughter smiling for the first time in a year. He had no idea that moment would change all their lives forever. "Stop the car." Mr. Collins's voice sliced through the silence of his luxury sedan, his tone sharp enough to make the driver flinch. Rain poured heavily that evening, hammering against the tinted windows as the billionaire businessman leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing. The city was drowned in darkness and the rhythmic tapping of rain. He hated nights like these, wet, unpredictable, messy. Everything about them reminded him of chaos, something he had spent his entire life trying to avoid. He had just left another board meeting, another battle for control, profits, and power. His mind was still wrapped in numbers and deadlines when something unusual caught his attention. Under a flickering streetlight, half hidden by the curtain of rain, he saw movement. It wasn't the usual scene of beggars or stray dogs he occasionally passed on the streets. It was something different, something that didn't fit the cold, colorless night. A boy, no older than 12 or 13, was dancing. Barefoot, drenched, and shivering, the boy moved with a rhythm that didn't belong to the street. His arms flowed like waves, his feet splashing puddles in perfect timing. Every move spoke of struggle and hope, pain wrapped in grace. The rain became his music, the pavement his stage. But what truly made Mr. Collins freeze wasn't the dance itself. It was the small figure sitting nearby, sheltered weakly under a broken umbrella, a little girl in a wheelchair. She clapped softly, laughing between raindrops, her eyes glowing with joy so pure that even the storm seemed to pause. Mr. Collins blinked, his heartbeat skipping. That smile, he knew that smile. "Wait," he whispered, then his face turned pale. That's my daughter, Lila." His pulse quickened. Without another word, he shoved open the car door, ignoring the rain drenching his expensive suit. The driver called after him, but he didn't care. He rushed toward the two figures, confusion and disbelief twisting inside him. "Lila, what on earth are you doing here?" The little girl turned, her golden hair plastered to her forehead, her blue eyes bright despite the storm. "Daddy, look," she said, her voice full of excitement. "Ethan's teaching me how to smile again." The boy stopped mid-spin, startled by the sudden shout. His body stiffened, and his expression shifted from joy to fear. He looked small and fragile now, standing before a man whose presence carried authority and wealth. "I am sorry, sir," the boy stammered, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean to upset anyone. She wanted to see me dance, and I thought." "Enough," Mr. Collins snapped, his voice cold. "Get away from her. Right now." The boy lowered his gaze immediately, stepping back, water dripping from his clothes. His lips quivered, but he didn't argue. He was used to that tone, the tone that said he didn't belong. Lila's smile faded, replaced with panic. "No, Daddy, please don't. He's my friend. He's not bad." "Lila," Mr. Collins said firmly, his voice softening just slightly. "You don't understand. You can't just talk to strangers on the street." "He's not a stranger," she cried. "He makes me happy. He helps me forget that I can't walk." Her words hit him like a punch to the chest. For a moment, Mr. Collins couldn't speak. His daughter hadn't talked like this, with energy, with emotion, in months. But instead of relief, all he felt was fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of danger. He glanced at Ethan again. The boy stood silently in the rain, hugging his thin arms for warmth, eyes lowered in shame. Mr. Collins exhaled sharply, his breath fogging in the cold air. "Go," he said flatly, "before I call someone to take you away." Ethan's head dropped even lower. He gave one last look at Lila, a small, apologetic smile, and turned to walk away, his bare feet splashing softly in the puddles. Lila's sobs echoed through the rain. "Daddy, you don't understand. He's the only one who talks to me like I'm normal." But Mr. Collins didn't respond. His jaw tightened as he lifted his daughter into his arms and carried her toward the car. She struggled weakly, still crying out Ethan's name, but he didn't stop. Inside the car, Lila pressed her forehead against the window, watching the boy disappear into the night, a shadow swallowed by rain and darkness. Her tiny fingers left marks on the glass as she whispered, "He just wanted to dance for me, Daddy." Mr. Collins sat silently beside her, water dripping from his hair. His mind was loud, but his heart was louder. There was something about that boy's eyes, a strange mix of pain and kindness, that he couldn't shake off. As the car drove away, the billionaire looked out into the storm. The image of the barefoot dancer burned into his thoughts. He didn't know why, but deep inside, something stirred, something he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Guilt. And as lightning flashed across the sky, a quiet truth whispered through his mind. That boy hadn't just danced for his daughter. He had danced for hope. And without realizing it, Mr. Collins had just turned his back on the one person who might save his daughter's heart. Lila had been paralyzed for almost a year. One terrible night had changed everything. It was supposed to be a simple drive home after her ballet recital, her favorite night of the year. The sky had been clear, her laughter filling the back seat as she told her father about her dream of becoming a professional dancer. But dreams can shatter in an instant. A speeding truck, blinding headlights, a scream, and then silence. When Mr. Collins woke up in the hospital, bruised but alive, the first thing he asked for was Lila. The doctor's face said it all before the words came. She's awake, but her spinal cord was severely damaged. The next few months were filled with sterile hospital rooms, endless therapy sessions, and quiet tears. Lila, once full of life and rhythm, now sat motionless, staring at walls that never changed. The girl who once twirled through hallways now refused to even look at her reflection. Doctors gave medical explanations, therapists offered routines, and nurses offered sympathy, but nothing reached her heart. Mr. Collins tried everything money could buy: private specialists, advanced machines, imported medicines. Yet, the only sound that filled their mansion was silence. Every night, he stood by her door listening. Sometimes she'd hum softly to herself, like she used to when she danced. But most nights, there was nothing, just the faint hum of the oxygen machine and his own guilt echoing inside him. He blamed himself for the accident. If only he hadn't answered that phone call. If only he had driven slower. But guilt doesn't change fate. It only builds walls. And those walls between father and daughter were getting higher every day. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. It started when Lila's nurse mentioned that she hadn't been in her room for an hour. Panic struck Mr. Collins instantly. Security cameras revealed something that made him furious. His daughter, in her wheelchair, sneaking out the back gate, alone. The driver followed her discreetly and later reported what he saw. Every day, Lila went to a small park near the old city square, a place filled with street vendors, stray dogs, and people struggling to survive. And there, she would sit under a tree and watch a boy, a homeless boy, dancing for coins. The boy couldn't have been more than 13. His clothes were torn, his shoes missing, but his movements, they were full of life. His body swayed to unheard music, and even though the world ignored him, he smiled as if he was dancing for the stars themselves. Lila had been watching him for days before she finally gathered the courage to speak. "Why do you dance in the rain?" she asked one day, as drops began to fall from the sky. Ethan looked up, surprised to hear a voice that wasn't mocking or cold. He smiled faintly, his hair plastered to his forehead, because even the sky cries sometimes," he said, twirling softly, "but it never stops moving." Something inside Lila cracked open. She didn't know why, but his words made her feel seen, understood in a way no doctor or therapist ever had. For the first time in months, she smiled. And Ethan noticed. From that day forward, he danced just for her. He would show her different steps each afternoon. Silly, playful, creative. He'd spin in circles, jump into puddles, and tell her to imagine her wheelchair was a throne, not a cage. Lila would laugh until her cheeks hurt. Every laugh felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. She began to talk again, not to her father, not to her doctors, but to Ethan. She told him about her old ballet trophies, her favorite songs, and how she used to believe dancing was only for people who could stand. Ethan listened with warmth and said, "Dancing isn't about legs. It's about heartbeats." Lila began tapping her fingers to his rhythm, feeling the music through her hands instead of her feet. It was small, but it was something. When Mr. Collins found out, he was furious. To him, this boy was just another stranger from the streets, someone who might take advantage of his fragile daughter. He couldn't understand what Lila saw in him. He confronted her gently at first. "Sweetheart, that boy, you don't even know who he is." But Lila looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I know enough. He makes me feel alive, Daddy. Isn't that what you wanted?" Those words struck deeper than she knew. That night, Lila cried herself to sleep, clutching a small paper Ethan had given her, a drawing of two stick figures dancing under the rain. Below it, he'd written, "Don't stop dreaming. The sky hasn't." Meanwhile, Ethan sat outside the hospital gate in the cold, hugging himself for warmth, staring at the glowing windows where Lila slept. He didn't know if he'd ever see her again, but in his heart, he whispered, "I'll keep dancing because maybe, just maybe, she'll feel it." And as the city lights flickered, the boy with nothing held on to the only thing he had: hope. The next morning, Mr. Collins went to work as usual. Sharp suit, polished shoes, the same expensive watch ticking against his wrist. From the outside, everything looked perfect as always. But inside, something fell off. His mind wasn't in the conference room, where his executives debated over numbers and strategies. His thoughts kept drifting back to the image of his daughter crying the night before, the way her tiny hands had clutched his arm, begging him not to take Ethan away. He had seen many things in life: failures, betrayals, financial losses, but Lila's tears haunted him differently. They carried a pain money couldn't fix. When the meeting finally ended, he reached into his briefcase for his documents, and something unexpected caught his eye. A piece of folded paper, smudged with colors. He opened it, and his breath hitched. It was a drawing done in bright crayons. In it, Lila sat in her wheelchair with her arms raised joyfully, while Ethan danced beside her under a rainbow. Both of them were smiling. Below the drawing, in her shaky handwriting, were the words, "Ethan makes my heart dance again." Mr. Collins stared at it for a long time, his throat tightening. It had been months since he'd seen his daughter smile that wide, even in photographs. He tried to focus on work, but every spreadsheet and every phone call blurred into noise. For the first time in his life, a billion-dollar deal didn't matter. All he could see was that simple crayon sketch drawn by a girl who had lost her reason to hope, until a homeless boy gave it back. That evening, when he returned home, the mansion felt colder than ever. He walked past the grand staircase, the marble floors, the giant chandelier, all symbols of wealth, yet none could light the emptiness he felt inside. When he entered Lila's room, she sat silently by the window, her plate untouched. Her nurse whispered, "She hasn't spoken all day, sir. She refuses to eat." Mr. Collins knelt beside his daughter, trying to meet her eyes. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? Are you feeling sick again?" Lila didn't look at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Tell Daddy I don't need medicine. I just need Ethan's dance." The words hit him harder than he expected. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away gently, her gaze still fixed on the window. That night, sleep refused to come. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying her words over and over. "I just need Ethan's dance." For years, Mr. Collins had believed that money could buy happiness, health, and hope. But now, watching his daughter slip further into despair, he realized how wrong he'd been. Finally, around midnight, he stood up, grabbed his coat, and called his driver. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. "Downtown," Mr. Collins said quietly. "The old city square." Rain had just started again, light and cold. As they drove through narrow streets, neon lights reflected off puddles, and laughter from small cafes echoed faintly through the night. The car slowed as they reached a crowded corner, and there, beneath a flickering lamp, stood Ethan. He was dancing again. A small group of people had gathered around him, dropping coins into a tin can. His movements were slower now, but full of emotion, raw, beautiful, painful. Every step seemed to carry a story: hunger, loneliness, and resilience. Mr. Collins watched silently from the car for a moment, something inside him shifting. The boy wasn't just dancing. He was pouring his soul onto the street. Finally, he stepped out, the rain instantly soaking his coat. The crowd murmured in surprise as the wealthy businessman approached the young street dancer. Ethan noticed him and froze mid-move, his face paling. "Yes, sir," he stuttered, unsure whether to bow or run. Mr. Collins didn't speak right away. He just looked at the boy, really looked, and for the first time he saw beyond the dirt and torn clothes. He saw courage. He saw kindness. He saw the reason his daughter smiled again. When the music ended, he finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "Come with me." Ethan blinked, confused. "Sir." Mr. Collins took a step closer. "I owe you an apology," he said, his tone softer than before. "And a job." The boy looked stunned. "A job?" Mr. Collins nodded. "You brought joy back into my daughter's life, something no doctor, no therapist could do. I can't change the past, but I can make things right." Ethan's lip trembled. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Mr. Collins replied. "Just come with me. Lila needs you." For a moment, Ethan hesitated, glancing down at his bare feet, then at the man's car waiting nearby. He had never trusted people in suits. They usually passed him by as if he didn't exist. But there was something different in Mr. Collins's eyes tonight, something real. Slowly, Ethan nodded. Mr. Collins placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "From now on, you'll never have to dance in the rain for coins again." As they drove back through the city lights, Ethan looked out the window, clutching the edge of the seat nervously. He didn't know what awaited him, but for the first time in years, he felt safe. And in another part of the city, a little girl in a wheelchair stirred in her sleep, a faint smile forming on her lips, as if her heart somehow knew that her dancer was coming back. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the Collins mansion, shy, nervous, and wearing clean clothes for the first time in years. The security guards at the gate had looked at him with disbelief. This was not the kind of boy who usually walked through those gates. His hair was neatly combed, his worn-out shoes replaced by a simple new pair, a gift from Mr. Collins's driver. Still, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong. The mansion loomed large and elegant before him. Marble pillars, wide lawns, and glass windows that gleamed like mirrors. He took a deep breath, clutching the strap of the small bag that held nothing more than a sketchbook and a few music notes he'd scribbled on torn papers. Inside, the air smelled of lavender and polished wood. A housekeeper led him through the grand hallway toward the back garden. She's been waiting for you all morning, the woman said with a smile. As soon as the door opened, a familiar voice cried out, "Ethan." Lila sat under a canopy of flowers, sunlight streaming around her like a halo. Her wheelchair had been decorated with tiny ribbons. She must have done it herself. Her eyes sparkled as she reached her arms out, her face glowing with a joy Ethan hadn't seen in anyone for a long time. "Hey, sunshine," he said softly, walking toward her. "You ready to dance?" She nodded eagerly. "I've been practicing with my hands like you showed me." He laughed, sitting on the ground in front of her. "Then show me." That day, the two danced again, Lila in her wheelchair, Ethan beside her, guiding her rhythm, her movements, her smile. He spun around her, encouraging her to feel the music instead of fearing it. He'd tap the arm of her chair lightly, saying, "Every sound has a heartbeat. You just have to find it." Her laughter filled the garden. For the first time, the mansion didn't feel like a museum. It felt like home. Day after day, their sessions continued. Ethan would bring old songs recorded on his cracked phone, sometimes even hum the tunes himself. He told Lila stories through dance, stories about the stars that fell but still shined, about rivers that found new paths when blocked, about birds that learned to fly with broken wings. Every movement carried a message. You're not broken. You're becoming. Sometimes Mr. Collins would watch from a distance, standing at his office window or the doorway, too proud to interrupt, too emotional to speak. Each time, he saw a new light in his daughter's eyes, something he thought he'd lost forever. Lila's physical therapist, who had nearly given up hope, began to notice small but remarkable changes. Her fingers were more active, her arms stronger, her posture straighter. She began trying to move her legs, ever so slightly, when no one was looking. One morning, Ethan arrived with a surprise. He brought 2 paper crowns made from golden foil. "What are these for?" Lila asked, giggling. "Today," Ethan said with a grin, placing 1 crown on her head. "We dance like kings and queens." He turned on a soft melody from his phone and began moving, slow, graceful, hopeful. "Now, imagine your legs are part of the rhythm," he told her. "Don't think about moving them. Just feel." Lila watched him closely. She felt the rhythm pulse through her, the same rhythm that had once lived in her every step before the accident. Something deep inside her stirred. Her hands tightened on the arms of her wheelchair. "Come on," Ethan encouraged. "You've got this." Her heart pounded. Her legs trembled. Then, slowly, almost impossibly, she pushed herself upward. The chair creaked beneath her. Her knees shook violently. But she didn't stop. Ethan froze mid-dance, his eyes wide. "Lila, I'm standing," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Her legs wobbled, but Ethan was there instantly, steadying her by the shoulders. Tears filled his eyes as he grinned. "You did it, Lila. You're standing." She began to laugh, breathless, shaky, but radiant. "I can feel it, Ethan. I can really feel it." Unseen by either of them, Mr. Collins stood at the doorway, his hand over his mouth. His eyes glistened as he took in the sight. His daughter, who doctors said would never walk again, standing with the help of a boy he'd once sent away. He turned slightly, his throat tight, whispering to himself, "Thank you, God." Lila looked at Ethan through tears. "Do you think I'll dance again someday?" Ethan smiled, wiping his cheeks. "You already are." In that moment, hope, something that had been buried deep under pain, fear, and guilt, bloomed again inside that house. The cold mansion that once echoed with silence now echoed with laughter, music, and footsteps that promised a miracle yet to come. And though neither of them said it out loud, both knew that this was only the beginning, a beginning that would soon change their lives forever. Months later, The Collins mansion looked nothing like it once had. The echoing halls that had once felt cold and lonely were now filled with music, laughter, and life. Lila had made remarkable progress. She could walk short distances with the help of a light brace and daily therapy. Each step was slow, shaky, but full of determination. Mr. Collins often found her in the garden, practicing gentle dance steps with Ethan by her side. Sometimes she would stumble, sometimes she'd fall, but she always smiled and said, "Let's try again." Seeing her like that made Mr. Collins realize how far they'd all come. It wasn't just Lila who was healing, it was him too. That's why he decided to do something special. He wanted to share Lila's story and Ethan's with the world. Not to boast, but to remind others that hope could grow even in the darkest places. He called it the Dance of Hope. Unlike his usual formal business events, this one wasn't filled with investors, politicians, or luxury branding. Instead, the hall was decorated with soft lights, white drapes, and candles that glowed like stars. Children from local hospitals were invited, along with families who had lost hope in the face of disability or hardship. Ethan was nervous backstage. He had never performed on a real stage before, let alone in front of hundreds of people dressed in their best clothes. He kept fiddling with his shirt collar until Lila giggled. "Relax," she said teasingly. "You've danced in the rain before. This should be easy." He smiled, his nerves fading slightly. "Yeah, but that time I didn't have all these people watching." Lila squeezed his hand. "Don't think about them. Just dance for what we believe in, hope." The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. Then, a soft melody filled the room. The same tune Ethan had once danced on the streets, under the flickering streetlight where everything had begun. Lila and Ethan stepped onto the stage together. The audience gasped. Many had heard rumors about the billionaire's daughter who had learned to walk again, but seeing her in person was something else entirely. Lila's steps were careful, but graceful. Ethan moved around her with rhythm and care, every gesture perfectly in sync. Together, they told a story through movement, of pain and loss, of friendship and courage, of how a street dancer and a broken girl found healing in each other's strength. Every step carried emotion. When Lila reached out and Ethan lifted her gently by the arms, it wasn't just choreography, it was trust made visible. When she stumbled slightly, he steadied her without hesitation. And when she finally spun slowly on her own, the entire crowd rose to their feet, clapping through their tears. By the time the music faded, the room was filled with thunderous applause. Some were crying openly, others smiling through tears. Even the camera crew capturing the event had watery eyes. Ethan and Lila bowed, their hands clasped tightly together. Then, to everyone's surprise, Mr. Collins himself walked onto the stage. He was holding a microphone, his expression soft, a mix of pride and humility. "Months ago," he began, his voice echoing gently through the hall, "I saw a homeless boy dancing under the rain. At the time, I thought he had nothing, but I was wrong. He had something far greater than wealth. He had hope." He paused, glancing at Ethan and Lila. "And that hope gave me back my daughter. It gave me back her smile, something no amount of money could ever buy." The crowd erupted into applause again, but Mr. Collins wasn't done. He turned to Ethan and said, voice trembling slightly, "From this day forward, you're no longer homeless. You're part of our family." Gasps filled the room. Cameras flashed. Lila covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then she ran, really ran, across the stage and threw her arms around Ethan. The two of them cried together as the crowd stood in awe, clapping and cheering louder than ever. It wasn't just a performance anymore. It was a real-life miracle unfolding before their eyes. That night became a moment the entire city talked about. The story spread beyond the event. Newspapers called it the dance that healed two hearts. Donations flooded in for Mr. Collins's new charity foundation for disabled children, which he named the Ethan and Lila Foundation for Hope. Years passed, but the story didn't fade. Ethan pursued formal dance therapy training, determined to help others heal the way Lila had. His methods, combining storytelling, music, and emotion, became revolutionary in therapy centers. By his mid-20s, Ethan was known across the country as one of the most compassionate and skilled dance therapists in the field. He worked with children who couldn't walk, soldiers who had lost limbs, and people who had lost faith in themselves. And every time someone asked him where his journey began, he would smile softly and say, "I once danced for hope under the rain. That night, I met a little girl who couldn't walk, and together, we learned to rise again." And somewhere in the audience of his performances, an older man and his grown daughter would always sit together, proud, grateful, and smiling, because they knew better than anyone else what it meant to believe in miracles born not from money, but from kindness, courage, and love. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful video. Thanks for watching.